Welcome to Attenuation, a weekly podcast where two friends come together to drink beer, discuss beer styles and trends, and just generally ruminate on the meaning of life, aka beer. If you enjoy your time with us, we invite you to become a weekly listener and subscribe to the podcast. Without further ado, here is this week's episode.
Hello, and welcome to episode 64 of Attenuation, a beer podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm joined by my best friend since 8th grade, Stephen.
Hello.
How's it going today, sir?
Amazing.
You ready to drink beer and talk about beer?
I am. Every week we go another week, and I'm just like, we're doing the podcast again. We've made it, and it makes me happy every time.
Yeah, I mean, the company is good, the beer is good. So I don't want to miss it every week.
Exactly.
So we have a fun topic today. We're going to talk about the future of beer.
Yes, there's some very cool new innovations in hops and yeast, and yeah, it's going to be a very, very cool episode. It was kind of blowing my mind as I read up on all these new things. So
yeah, it's wild. I didn't realize they were at this level of what they're doing, but it's pretty cool. But of course, before we get to that, we have to do our favorite segment of the podcast, which is drinking beer.
Mm-hmm.
So the way this works is I introduce my beer, give nose notes. Steven does the same. And then we cheers and give tasting notes. I busted out. I have a good one today.
He's going big.
I'm going big. And it's a school night, too, so I'm in big trouble. Because I have to talk to my boss tomorrow. But it's not until the afternoon, so.
Oh, you got plenty of time.
I'll recover tomorrow morning with some coffee. But I'm drinking, now this is one of the ones Steven brought me, very generously brought me. And this is one of the kings of barrel-aged stouts. This is Goose Island Brewery. And this is their Bourbon County barrel-aged stout.
Yeah, this is not just one of the kings. It may be the king.
I was looking on Beer Advocate in preparation, and it's rated 100 out of 100. And that's based on 13,000 ratings. So
yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yes, I'm really excited. I've never had this. So I will crack into this bad boy.
Nice. And what's the ABV?
It's 14%.
Nice.
And I even took it out about 10 to 15 minutes ago, so it's
nice.
Hopefully warmed up a little bit.
Such preparation and forethought.
Well, this is a special beer. So.
Look at that. It's a very fancy beer, and there's no cork or wax to cut through.
That's a really good point, and an excellent callback to our most recent episode.
Yeah,
they are not.
Nice job, Goose Island.
Yeah, they're not trying to be too fancy.
I would say even the bottle isn't even like.
Yeah, you know what? They're not even doing.
Very simple.
They're doing none of the gimmicks. They're not using fancy art. They're not using wax, and they're not using a cork because they know the product speaks for itself, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so this pours jet black, and there's very minimal head actually. It's just kind of what you normally get with a stout, where it has a little bit of a ring around the top, but that almost very quickly dissipated.
I love that you're drinking it from your bottle-on glass too.
Yes, that was also a calculated choice. Oh, wow, this smells unreal. Like, the number one smell I'm getting is like burnt sugar. Burnt sugar.
He is falling in love.
Yeah, you can't see my face, but I'm having an experience over here. Burnt sugar, definitely you get the bourbon barrels. And then chocolate, vanilla, dark fruits. But there's like that toffee burnt sugar smell that's really prominent. It smells amazing. Okay. All right. What are you drinking, Steven? I'm pretty hyped. I got to settle down.
Awesome. Well, I'm drinking a dark beer today too. This is Black Raven Brewing. They're from Woodinville, Washington. This is Coco Jones. It is a coconut porter. 5.2% ABV. This one's 89 on Beer Advocate. So
that's still really good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. All right, so mine's dark too. Nice dark brown color. But the head's not super tinted. It's a fairly light colored head, but a solid head with a nice carbonation. Nose is pretty simple. Just a little bit of roasted malt coffee. Just a touch of coconut. It's not really prominent in the nose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a real basic kind of chocolatey roasted coffee malt aroma. And then just the hint of coconut on the nose.
All right.
See how it goes.
Cheers, sir.
Cheers.
This is living up to the hype. So you do get that. There is like a candy sweetness to this, which is really detectable on the nose, and it's kind of the first thing I'm tasting, like toffee almost. Like toffee, cherry, dark fruits, and then you get bourbon, kind of the barrel notes. You get a flash of alcohol heat because it is 14%, but it's not boozy, but there is this like, it makes itself known for a little bit in the development. And then cola and vanilla in the aftertaste, which is really fascinating. I had heard this has like cola notes in it, but it was difficult for me to imagine that. And then I think that makes sense. I think that's why they probably do a cola variant, because they're kind of like playing into the fact that flavor is present, which is cool.
Right, try to sort of amplify that, go towards that. And
then the mouthfeel it's a bit oily, a bit like syrup, but it's actually like thinner than I expected. It's not as thick as you would guess for a 14% barrel-aged stout, but I can see why this is really, really popular, because it's complex, but at the same time, it's like almost straightforward. It's weird. It's difficult to explain, but yeah, I would fill my fridge with this if I could. So yeah, huge thumbs up on this one.
Awesome.
So cheers, friend. Thanks for bringing this one out to me.
Okay, lives up to its 100 score.
I think so. I'll check back in. But so far, 2 huge thumbs up, I would say.
Okay, cool. Mine's really good. It's very interesting. It's very, very light-bodied. Extremely light-bodied. Drinks like a very light beer. It's sweet. It has like a kind of a Hershey's chocolate kiss sweetness, with just a touch of like almond nuttiness to it, and then a very, very oily coconut flavor towards the end, and then a little bit of a roasted coffee flavor too. It's super interesting because, like I said, it's so light-bodied, but also fairly flavorful. You know, a nice flavor profile that you can like sit with, and it kind of develops through the tasting. But just a surprising amount of flavor for such a light-bodied beer. So it's
awesome.
Extremely drinkable. Also it's like giving these really great, rich chocolate, vanilla, and like almond and coconut flavor. So well done.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, in a 5.2% beer. So just, pretty nice.
Is that a thumbs up then?
Yeah, thumbs up.
Cool. Double thumbs up day.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know it's going to be a good one.
We gotta start doing more thumbs down days.
No, those are bad days.
Just mix it up, though. People were like, they love every beer they drink.
Hey, I gave a thumb sideways last week.
Thumb sideways, yes. Yeah.
Thumb sideways.
That's like the thumb down on Attenuation, the beer podcast.
I know.
You get a thumb sideways, it's like basically a thumbs down.
It's basically a thumbs down.
Because we didn't give you.
I didn't want to be.
Because we give like almost every beer a thumbs up.
We like beer, okay? It's the beer geek in us.
I'm gonna drink Budweiser next week and be like,
and give
thumbs
it a big thumbs down. No, you would give it a huge double thumbs down. I know you. All right, so that was our drinking beer segment. Next, we have news and postscripts. News is self-explanatory. Postscripts is when we either correct or elaborate on something from a previous episode, and we do have postscript today.
We do. No beer news. Nothing worth reporting.
I scanned the beer news, and some breweries are closing, and
we've decided to stop reporting on
that. That's been our beer news for like the last 6 weeks, and it's really it's bumming me out. So we're done with breweries are closing. Just keep that in mind. Yeah.
I will say though that I think like I was kind of reading a trends article, like what to look for in beer in the next year,
And some of it was really positive about expansion of breweries, and because some of the breweries they actually are opening more tap rooms to make money. Like there's a lot of rental spaces available, and they can open these tap rooms and make quite a bit of money, more money than they would make on like distributing their beer to the area, So because I think if you can create a place where people want to come and like hang out and then also drink your beer,
Yes.
is cool. So I think we will see some more like tap room, like extension tap rooms, where they're just like maybe not necessarily brewing a lot of beer there, but just serving their beer in those areas.
Right, and the social aspect of a brewery or tap room is definitely adding to it. So
maybe we'll see more openings and fewer closings as we get through the pandemic.
Yeah.
As we weed out the breweries that couldn't quite make it through.
I know. On the one hand, I feel really bad, but on the other hand, I feel like we did hit a saturation point, and now we're going to have it's inevitable that some people are just not going to make it. The competition is very, very, very steep. And
welcome to capitalism.
The good and the bad. So, yeah.
But yeah, postscript. So last week we talked a little bit about collaborations, and honestly, while listening to the episode, and the more I just thought about it, I was like, I think I could do a whole episode on collaborations. I have multiple rants now that I can make on collaborations. But what was interesting, I was thinking and what I'm seeing more and more now is not just, well, first of all, I'm seeing tons of collaborations. Basically every day, my Instagram feed is just full of breweries posting beers, and they're like all collaborations. It's kind of starting to upset me. But what I didn't mention is that a lot of breweries are also doing collaborations, not with other breweries, but with local bakeries. That's a very popular one. Or local like coffee shops or coffee bean companies. So like there's a company called Mostra Coffee. They've done beer collaborations with Stone, J. Wakefield, Cycle, the brewery, St. Archer Brewing, a bunch of Belching Beaver. So they've done even Bottle Logic. So they've done a ton of collaborations with these really big name breweries so that they use their coffee in the beer. So kind of, I don't know. I almost like that better because
Yes.
I get it. It's it is still a very clear marketing strategy, but I don't know. It's just one ingredient to the beer.
Well,
what
I like about that is
this specific coffee is a good coffee or whatever.
Yeah, I like that a lot more because it's almost like they're reaching out they want to do some sort of adjunct, right? But they're reaching out to a very high quality specific brand. I love the idea of reaching out to a coffee house and being like, hey, you make a really popular coffee. We have a really popular stout. Let's do a coffee stout. That's kind of cool. I really like that idea because then it's it's still a little gimmicky, but you're like, hey, we're going to make a coffee stout. We might as well use a really good coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Instead of whatever, because otherwise, maybe they just source coffee from whatever, but it's kind of a cool opportunity to one, it'll be a cool collaboration, and two, this is a really high quality coffee that we're going to be adding to the beer. So yeah, that's kind of cool. I like that. Yeah. You said that some of they're doing but even collabs with bakeries and stuff like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So there was one that has I think it was a stout made with macarons, and so they got all these French macarons from a bakery, local bakery, and put those in the beer. I think I remember there was one that they threw in these what was it, oatmeal cream pies or something, and but the oatmeal cream pies were from this artisan bake. It wasn't they were throwing Little Debbie oatmeal cream pies. They got this artisan made oatmeal cream pies from this fancy bakery, and that's what they threw in their stout. So they dry hopped the stout with oatmeal cream pies.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So just stuff like that. It's just cool because it promotes another local business while also creating a cool and fun beer. So I think I'm a little bit higher on those collaborations than I am just two breweries getting together and creating a recipe, which I think sometimes is just they want to hang out.
All right, well, we'll do a future episode we'll do Steven rants on collabs.
Watch Steven's soul die on the podcast as he realizes their collaborations are not as cool as he thought.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. That was my fault.
There's another one, Martin House Brewing in Fort Worth. There's this really cool artisan ice cream place called Melted or Melt, I can't remember, in Fort Worth. And so they do like ice cream inspired sour beers too, like collaboration with Melt Ice Cream.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Fun stuff like that. Yeah, you can do sours, stouts, all these different kinds of beers that match up nicely with local pastries and sweets shops and ice cream shops. So
yeah, that's cool too. I like when they're like collaborating with a local business. That's fun too, because then it's kind of like it's the terroir of the local
business,
scene.
the local business terroir. That's great.
So okay, cool.
Yeah, that was a little addition to the collaboration.
Yeah, that was a good postscript. All right, do you want to get into our main topic, the future of beer?
This is super interesting because some of it is, well, I mean, of course, a lot of it is business related. What can you do to sort of cut costs or create better yields, not waste as much beer in production? So a lot of it is driven by that. Some of it is driven by the flavors in beer and how to get those flavors or amplify those flavors, because they're the flavors that people are the most, requesting to be in their beer, which is a lot of these like tropical flavors in their IPAs. So somewhat driven by business, somewhat driven by what customers are demanding, what flavors they're demanding in their beer. And then other is just sort of like, because of those demands, there's like, climate change, and there's all this sort of different agricultural factors and stuff, and keeping up with those demands. And so in order to make the use of what hops, like make the use of the hops more efficient and that kind of stuff is kind of driving this. So obviously all those are sort of business related, it's business driven, but these new products that they're creating are trying to make it easier for breweries and more efficient for breweries to make their beer and produce their beer, so, and make beers that people like without overrunning the supply of hops. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, some of these products that are available to brewers and breweries looking to change the way they brew, maybe increase efficiency and stuff. So
this stuff is really interesting. We're researching it, in the pre-recording session that we have, and we found some fun stuff. Well,
it's kind of amazing, how much science is going into this business.
Well, yeah, and it's a real testament to just how big craft beer is. That you have all of these, there's a lot of money going into research, and all these businesses are popping up they're just supporting the production of craft beer. They're making these products that, they're not making beer, but they're making all these products just to support beer. And a lot of money went into some of this stuff, and these products are expensive. It's kind of crazy. This is this whole universe of businesses that are popping up around craft beer just to support it. So it's cool. It's really interesting.
So fascinating to me. This is I lose faith in humanity on a daily basis, but every once in a while I get regain it, and sometimes I am amazed. And we've talked about this before, how we're not entrepreneurial, risk takers. But just imagine being of course, these people are probably coming from a lot of experience in the craft beer world and the brewing world. But, they're let's just start a business where we create, we genetically modify yeast strains and sell them to craft brewers. What?
Right.
How do you even do that? So
it's even more scary than starting a brewery. It's a tangential business that's
business that you hope you have enough clients and enough people buying your thing. It's mind-blowing to me that
same
that people do that. So it's very cool, and I love that humans are innovative enough and risky enough to start businesses like this. But so one of the ones that we're starting to see pop up a little bit more now, in actually seeing in beers, is called Incognito. So this is a hop extract that is designed, it's a liquid hop extract, so you have zero vegetative material. So if you've ever brewed beer at home, most likely you use hop pellets, which look like, I don't know, kind of look like dog food.
Yeah, they do. That's a good
like
description.
pellet dog food or rabbit food. I guess I should say rabbit food.
They look, more like rabbit food.
Yeah. One of the most frustrating things as a home brewer is the large amounts of hop material at the bottom of the kettle at the end. And, there are a lot of different techniques, a lot of hopping techniques. You can whirlpool the hops, you can put them in a hop basket. There's some ways you can decrease some of that material, but inevitably when you use hop pellets, you just get a lot of hop material at the bottom of your kettle. And you're going to experience some beer loss in that process, right? Because it's absorbing some of the beer, and you can't pour that. You want to leave that material behind. So some beer is going to get left behind with that hop material so that you don't transfer any of that hop material. So to increase efficiency, which is one benefit of the Incognito hops, is that you have a liquid hop extract that has no vegetative material and that you can pour directly in to your whirlpool on the hot side, and you basically get all the benefits of hopping the beer without the inefficiency of losing beer with the vegetative material, and you get a greater beer yield.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I remember, like, even, and I could get this wrong because you're the person with the more brew experience, but even like I know you have like a system where it basically has the thing at the bottom where it's trying to collect kind of that biomass and the vegetal stuff, so it's easy for you to discard it. But you're kind of saying, like, with this product, you're kind of eliminating having to do that altogether.
Well, and even during that process, when I take it's called the trub, when I take that off, the level of the beer drops.
You can watch it go down. Yeah,
is like it's like scary how you just lose so much beer in the process of trying to gather, because it has this this mason jar basically at the bottom that's collecting all this stuff. Well, no matter how much it fills with a bunch of stuff, there is a lot of beer in there too. Right. You just take that off and you discard that. You put that jar back on and you open the valve up and it just rushes down into there, and it's just very dissatisfying to see
You're
how
watching
much,
all your
how
beer pour
much
out,
beer
yeah. No, my precious beer.
So I can totally see how at a commercial scale, how much more beer you could keep with a liquid hop extract that just is soluble into the beer. So.
Well, it's funny too because there's like a promotional video on one of the websites that sells the Incognito, and it's not targeted towards me because I'm not a brewer, but it kind of shows the product.
Yeah, it doesn't look very appetizing.
It doesn't. It's like they're like pouring it against like a surface, and you can kind of see it like sliding down. It kind of looks like syrup. But I think maybe to the trained brewer's eye, maybe they're detecting like, okay, if I mix this into my hot side, it's not going to add a bunch of... the other thing, I guess, it's like one of the key points on this website is that they say it's basically liquid at ambient temperature. So I think maybe that's another thing they're trying to demonstrate in that promo video. So like even when it's not hot, you can just pour it right in. It's liquid. You don't have to worry about it heating it up or dissolving it or all that stuff. So very interesting.
The other thing, too, is that there's a huge decrease in both the shipping and the storage costs.
Oh.
Right, so this is concentrated hop extract. You don't have to ship or store large amounts of whole cone hops. There's a lot less waste and a lot less cleanup at the end, too, because that's a huge mess trying to get rid of all that vegetative material and clean all that up. The Incognito hops currently come in 8 varieties: Centennial, Chinook, Citra, Eldorado, Mosaic, Equinaut, Sabro, and then an experimental hop called HBC 472, which was developed by Haas. This is actually kind of fun because I was like, I wonder what that hop, what are the qualities of that hop? The flavors of that hop are oak, bourbon, coconut, vanilla, and citrus.
Whoa.
Yeah. interesting hop flavors.
Yeah.
So yeah, 8 varieties of incognito hops, and again, these are designed to go on the hot side. So this is when they would like whirlpool the hops. More of your bittering hop additions, although like later hop additions even on the hot side are more towards your aromatics. But so that's kind of interesting because it would be where you would expect a little bit more bitterness to come out, although a lot of these one of the benefits of incognito is to give you a lot of the hop flavors and aromas without the bitterness. So you get a lot of benefits as you would from just dry hopping, but in the hot side. So you're really amping up the aromas and flavors here with the incognito hops.
Cool.
And then the other side of that, they developed a product called Spectrum, and then this is basically the same thing but designed for the dry hopping side.
Okay.
On the cold side of the fermentation, and this only comes in 2 varieties, Citra and Mosaic.
Well, at least they have Citra.
Yeah.
Your favorite.
I mean, nobody dry hops with really anything other than this.
Oh, really?
No, I mean they do, but
yeah. But you get
it's
the
the
best
number one,
results
and I
from
would say
Citra.
Mosaic's probably numbered.
So they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, the next time you brew, I saw that they had Citra on the incognito side, so I was like, Steven's gonna be ordering that Citra hop. I know that's his favorite.
Yeah, I kind of want to brew with just liquid hop extract, and that's
yeah,
like no pellet hop, because and you'll see like a lot of breweries, even though they're using the incognito hops, they're still using some hop pellets.
Okay, it's like a combination.
Yeah, and they say it works really well to like combine with whole cone hops, with pellets. You can mix and match, and you see that a lot. But yeah, Citra and Mosaic, 2 varieties for the Spectrum, which is the dry hopping. What's really, really cool about this is that it's instant flavor and aromatics. So if you're dry hopping with pellet or whole cone hops, and you've put them in the beer in the fermenter. Mm-hmm. If you were to like put those in for like a minute and then take them out, they're not in there for enough time to create, like the beer has to sit on the surface area of those hop pellets or cones.
Okay.
To like get the flavors and aromatics. They have to sit in there. Whereas if you pour in this hop extract, the Spectrum, like the beer instantly has all the flavors and aromas of the hops. Like you don't have to wait. It doesn't have to sit on it.
It's like the difference between.
I mean, it'd be like pouring vanilla extract in or having something sit on vanilla beans, right? Like,
yeah, I was gonna make the analogy to like tea, because that's kind of what dry hopping is in a funny way. Is like it's like
teabagging.
It's like putting a tea bag into the coal, and it's on the I could be getting this wrong, but basically, what is like the temperature when you're dry hopping? Is it still warm or is it cooler?
Fermentation temperature, so like 70 degrees.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a little bit like tea. Oh, but the difference is this is like taking, kind of what you're saying, like a syrup and pouring it in. Like it instantly dissolves. You don't have to wait for that like steeping time,
right?
To continue the tea analogy. Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so it decreases the time that would be required of dry hopping, having those hops sit on that beer for a certain amount of time. So just a lot of both the time and efficiency benefits to using both the incognito and Spectrum liquid hop extracts. Pretty cool. Really cool like innovation here. Apparently they've been doing a couple years. I think they said like these products have been in R&D for like 4 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. But part of that R&D is like going out to breweries and having breweries make beers with them, like big name breweries. So New Belgium has been working with Spectrum hop extracts for a while.
Okay.
And I don't even know if they necessarily like advertise that they're using them.
I see.
Like they might just be using them in a beer that you're drinking and you don't even know it. Which I think is going to be more and more common. Like I don't necessarily think that the breweries are going to use it as a marketing ploy. I think they're just going to change to these different hop techniques basically to create a more efficient beer. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily a gimmick. It's just,
this isn't like a sexy thing they're going to put on the can. Mm-hmm. This is something that'll change in the background where they're having a much better yield and they're saving money, but you as the consumer will never even know they switched over.
That they switched, yeah.
Yeah.
Really fascinating.
That's actually really interesting.
And another benefit too is they're claiming that these are a lot more standardized, which is even more important when you're making one beer over and over and over. You want a commercially standard beer, right? So people are experiencing the beer the same way every time, and you get a lot more of that standardization of flavors using these hop oils, so these hop extracts.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can make a more consistent product.
Yeah, so very cool.
I like that. So that was Incognito and Spectrum.
One of the other products that the same company makes is called Lupo Max. And all that really is kind of like it's sort of a middle ground between using hop pellets and using these liquid hop extracts. It's like a more concentrated pellet.
Okay.
So you can get the same amount of flavors by using fewer pellets. So again, you'll just have less vegetative material. Like you still will have it, but you'll have a lot less because you were able to use a lot fewer pellets that's the higher concentrated lupulin powder in the pellet. So anyway, it's just kind of a middle ground. Maybe if you don't want to go all the way and spend a lot of money on the hop extracts, but you want to increase efficiency a little bit, Lupo Max is kind of your next step up from pellets. So, yeah.
So many choices when we start our brewery.
Yes, yeah. Well, when we do that, we'll have all the money in the world, so we're going full extract.
All the way.
Yeah.
All right, and then so the next one is actually a little bit different. We've talked about it a little bit before, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper on Phantasm powder. And this is interesting, and unlike kind of what we were talking about with Spectrum and Incognito, where it's like happening behind the scenes, they're not really going to put it on the can. Phantasm powder is it's kind of the opposite. It's like they're at a lot of
it's a gimmick.
They're okay. Steven's coming out and saying it, but they're putting it on the can, like, hey, we're doing this cool thing, right? Yeah.
Yes, and the reason I say that is because, look, I think if you take, at some point I'm gonna have to figure out how to do this. Figure out a way to obtain a double mosaic dream from Other Half and a double mosaic dream with Phantasm powder and drink them side by side. Because there's just no way I'm gonna be able to open one of these beers and be like, yeah, the flavors and aromas are stronger in this beer. I don't think it's possible.
No, 100%. I think if you're tasting it in isolation, you're not gonna be able to. You might think that's happening because you've been.
I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's not that I couldn't open a beer and be like, oh, yeah, this smells do seem a lot stronger. Right when I opened the beer, I smelled it really strongly. I don't think that's necessarily all in your head. So I think it is, and maybe that's what they're banking on. But I just think that's the reason why I think it's a little gimmicky is that it is. I think to 95% of people, it's not going to make that much of a difference.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's just
So
I would love to try a side by side. It has to be the exact same beer though. It has to be
yeah.
This exact beer and then this exact
beer with Phantasm
powder. So you could really differentiate what exactly is it adding to the smell and to the taste.
But for those of you who don't know, so Phantasm powder is a thiol powder. So thiols are compounds in beer produced by the yeast that create some of those tropical flavors, mainly guava and passion fruit. Thiols are also very present in the skins of Sauvignon Blanc grapes. So they have found a way to create a high thiol containing powder from the skins of Sauvignon Blanc grapes.
It's kind of funny because it's coming from
someone started a business based on making a powder out of Sauvignon Blanc and marketed it to breweries.
Yeah, that's the funny part. It's hey, you guys want to make wine with these grapes? No.
No.
These are for beer. And you're like, these grapes are for beer? What?
Man, forward thinkers.
Yes.
Tell you what.
super entrepreneurs.
So yeah, that's Phantasm powder. Again, I think it's kind of gimmicky, but time will tell.
And I feel like both tried beers with Phantasm powder, I think on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it remains to be seen if this will be something that stays or if it's something that's a little bit of a fad and maybe in 2 years you just won't hear about it anymore.
Yeah.
It's hard to say at this point.
Yeah. And it may be, like I said, one of the other reasons I think it's sort of gimmicky is that I feel like it's being used as a gimmick. It's one of those things that really is being like put on the can and advertised, whereas, some of these other things maybe aren't. So maybe right now it is being used as a marketing tool. Maybe it will also go into the background. It's just something that breweries use to create a more flavorful and aromatic beer, and they'll just put out their such and such IPA, and it'll be good. People will like it and they'll buy it, and they won't necessarily know that it was specifically made with Phantasm powder.
Yeah, they won't be putting that on the label, but maybe it just becomes integral to the process. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So those are kind of those are hops, and then of course Phantasm powder is a little bit of in a category of its own. And then we get to the yeast.
This is the coolest part.
The coolest part. First of all, I'm fascinated by genetically modified things in general. I know your dad does this kind of stuff, and it just I love talking to him about it. It's so cool to hear, just
genetics.
To just protect wine grapes from different diseases and stuff, and it's just so cool. So apparently there's a huge body of science working on the genetic modifications of brewer's yeast, and they're making them do some really cool stuff.
Crazy stuff. Yeah.
So we just talked about thiols with the Phantasm powder. There is a yeast that has been developed by Omega Yeast in Chicago, and they call this the Cosmic Punch Ale yeast. The whole point of this yeast is to create as many thiols as possible. So I can't remember, I think it was an Anchorage brew that used, I may have drank it on the podcast, I can't remember, but it was they used Cosmic Punch yeast. Okay. They used Phantasm powder and incognito hop. It was ridiculous. It was basically awesome. All of these things in one beer.
You should have called it Future Tech. Yeah.
So it might have been, I think it was a little bit too overwhelming, honestly.
Yeah, they were let's try everything out.
I was oh my god, this is insane. There's too much flavor in this beer. But yeah, so that's the Cosmic Punch Ale yeast. There's another one called Tropics yeast. It was created by Berkeley Yeast. It's a whole line of different types of yeast. They have multiple variations, different attenuation strains, that kind of rates and that kind of stuff. But the whole point again is to create thiols. So what the yeast do is they don't produce more thiols. They actually produce an enzyme called CSL, carbon sulfolase, that converts some of these malt molecules into thiols, therefore producing thiols. So awesome.
It's a really cool chain reaction.
Yeah, and it creates a lot of guava and passion fruit aromas and flavors in the beer. So you can see how useful that would be for a brewery trying to make a really, really tropical IPA, which is what everybody wants now, right?
Yeah, and it's crazy because they're doing other stuff too, where they're basically trying to have the yeast be able to add flavors, or in some cases even lactic acid to the beer, which is insane.
This is my favorite. Because now I'm I think I could brew a sour beer.
It's taking a lot of the risk out, right?
Yeah, I don't have to kettle sour. That's what they're saying, is that this is an alternative to kettle souring. Just use they've created a yeast that produces lactic acid and brings the pH down to a pretty reliable 3.4 or something, which is right where you want your sour beer to be.
So you could just...
This is awesome.
You don't have to worry about kettle souring. You don't have to worry about ruining your brewery with lactobacillus. Yeah. So I've been looking at this. I've been obsessed with this. Basically, a countertop brew machine called Beer Maker.
Okay. And it's really cool because it's all self-contained. They have recipe kits that they send you, but then you can also do your own stuff, right? So you can create your own grain bill, you can use your own yeast, you can add fruit to the thing. I mean, you can do whatever you want, a ton of different stuff to the beer that you're making. You can make it your own, create your own recipe. And the really cool thing is that it only makes about a gallon of beer. So you can make small batches of stuff. You can experiment. You don't feel like you're making 5 gallons and you're never going to be able to drink that much beer. And then it has its own little dispenser thing too, where you just move the thing straight out of the one machine into the dispenser with a little CO2 cartridge and pour it.
Oh, that's awesome. So, yeah.
It's amazing. It's on my list of things that I just absolutely want.
Your wish list.
I'm considering just selling my kegerator, selling all my brewing equipment, everything, and just getting this thing because I think it would be way more fun and I'm sure I would make better beer. But one of the things is I reached out to the company and said, hey, like, is there a way to kettle sour this machine?
Using with this machine.
Yeah. And they wrote me back and said, like, well, we're trying to figure it out. This is the perfect solution. We just make a recipe with this galactic yeast from Berkeley Labs.
Boom, and it's souring the beer for you.
Yeah, there's no other process.
Okay, this is cool. This is really cool.
It's my favorite. This is the one that I was like geeking out about when I was getting ready for the episode. So that's a game changer.
Yeah, this more than like Phantasm Powder, this seems like the future because there's so much stuff they could do.
Because kettle souring is like, that is a new method, right? Like that's, for years and years and years, breweries had to try and like do these mixed culture fermentations, right? You have some yeast, some bacteria, and you're hoping that like you get a good balance of yeast fermentation and bacterial fermentation. And now like you don't need the bacteria.
Yeah, so they're like it's like making the whole process simpler.
Yeah. So it was like kettle sour was the innovation of like, okay, let's let the bacteria do its thing first, then kill the bacteria, and then let the yeast do their thing. And now this is like, let's let the yeast do everything.
Yeah, we don't even need the bacteria. The yeast will handle everything.
Awesome. Oh, I love it.
It's really fascinating.
And then it was the next logical step, but
right, yeah, they just keep moving everything to the yeast. Pretty soon, you won't even need hops. The yeast will do that.
Yeah. Oh, and can we move? Do you want to talk about that?
Go ahead.
So they have another one called Super Bloom, a yeast variety. This creates 3 different compounds that mimic the compound, or they produce the exact same compounds that mimic the hop flavors of Cascade hops. And sorry, that was like a long way of just saying that there's essentially created a yeast that during fermentation creates hop flavors.
It's like, yeah. So they're already starting to do that.
Zero bitterness. I mean, you can't really, even dry hopping, which produces basically aromatics and flavors without bitterness, still isn't zero bitterness. This is zero bitterness. All the flavor of the hops.
That's crazy. Well, and I feel like that opens up a lot of opportunities for adding, those flavor profiles that you want. If you can really guarantee that there's no bitterness, you can start to put those in other styles of beer even. Like, especially like what we really liked was where they kind of add the to like the Pilsner, where they're adding
a hoppy lager, yeah.
Yeah, imagine doing that.
Having like a light-bodied lager, but with like nice Cascade, citrusy, piney.
It sounds so good.
Hop aromas. Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, and then they even have one that they're saying they've engineered a yeast that can convert the sugar into THC and CBD. So nice. Yeah, they can literally make a beer that gives you those other effects, right? So that's pretty interesting. So it's almost like the potential of genetically engineering yeast to then add whatever you really want. Souring, hop flavors, THC. The possibilities are endless of like what you can have the yeast kind of take on, this additional role of modifying the beer. It's crazy.
So cool. The other thing they're doing, which from again getting to the like efficiency factor, they have strains of diacetyl free yeast. So one of the compounds that yeast produce during fermentation is diacetyl or diacetyl. That is the buttery off flavor. So like if you buy the Orville Redenbacher's popcorn, microwave popcorn, the butter on there, it's not actual butter in there, it's diacetyl.
Oh.
That's butter flavor when you anytime you see butter flavor. So anyway, that can be an off flavor in the beer. Well, what happens during fermentation is that diacetyl is created, but then it's consumed by the yeast, so it gets broken down. So if you end fermentation too soon and bottle your beer too quickly, you get that off flavor in your beer. So a lot of times you have to do a diacetyl rest, is what they call it, is a long enough fermentation for that to be broken down by the yeast. Well, they've created these strains that just don't even produce diacetyl, so then you don't need to rest it. So now you can bottle your beer a week or 2 weeks earlier, and now your brew time is shorter, and you're turning over the brewing equipment. So Schlitz beer.
they needed this innovation.
You were so ahead of your time.
They were ahead of their time. They just didn't have the right technology.
They just didn't know it.
That is really funny.
Poor Schlitz beer. See, they were trying to engineer a shorter brew time, and they
did it the wrong way.
Didn't know how to. Yeah.
Yeah, they needed genetic engineering.
That is some of the really cool stuff that's coming out of.
Yeah, really cutting edge. And you can imagine like this kind of research and stuff like that. It's expensive, so it's interesting they're putting money into these new technologies because there's a market for them.
Yeah, I mean, it must be. Yeah, they must know that these things are going to be desired.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be some sort of backlash because people will not want genetically modified yeast in their beer. But I hate to break it to you, humans have been doing genetic modification for 500 years.
I was going to say...
Yeah, it's just we're doing it a little bit more efficiently now.
Yeah. Yeah, and done probably more than people realize.
Yeah, go read a Wikipedia entry on corn and learn all about genetic modification through breeding, which is super inefficient, but it is genetic engineering, and now we're at like CRISPR level, which is very efficient genetic engineering, but it's the same.
Yeah,
just different efficiencies.
Yeah, super fascinating stuff. I love that there are companies that are dedicating their science to this, because eventually it's just going to make it easier for me to brew a sour.
Yeah, because Steven will be making a sour with THC in it on his dining room or kitchen counter in his little... What did you call that machine? It's the beer maker?
Yeah, the beer maker. Yeah.
I want one of these beer makers now.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to be looking this up after we finish recording.
Oh, it's awesome. It's so cool. I'm like... I think it at one point was a Kickstarter.
Oh, okay.
But now I think you can just order it. I'm pretty sure.
Very cool. All right, cool. Any other future technologies we want to cover?
I don't think so. I'm sure there are some cool, like, commercial, beer equipment kind of things, but all that's boring.
Depends on the audience.
There was just a couple weeks ago a huge beer convention up in like Minnesota, I think it was, but it was like a brewery convention. Like all these breweries are going up and like it's like BrewCon. I think that might have been what it's called anyway. But like not interesting at all, or probably maybe a little bit interesting to us, but not. The beer fan is not going to this. This is breweries going to see all the new equipment and newfangled equipment and,
you gotta be really
technology.
Yeah.
I'm sure Berkeley Labs had a...
Yeah, they had a booth there.
Berkeley Yeast had a booth.
Yeah. You would enjoy that a lot, I think.
It would be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm an end product. That's another difference between us. I just want to drink.
You probably would. Yeah.
I would think it's interesting, but I'm all about consuming the end product. Yeah. You're definitely more interested in the production side of it. So
I thought this was a beer festival.
Yeah, people show up and they're like, "What are all these machines? I want to drink a beer." Yeah. Very cool. I think we can call that an episode. So we are always available if you want to reach out to us at attenuation.podcast on Instagram. You can also email us at contact@attenuation@gmail.com. So this has been episode 64 of Attenuation, a beer podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm joined by my best friend since 8th grade, Steven.
That's me.
And we are saying cheers, and we'll see you next week for episode 65.
All right, cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Attenuation, a beer podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Instagram or Facebook for more fun content. Catch you next week. Cheers!